It was just a regular Wednesday night. I'd come home, kicked off my shoes, and was about to sink into the couch when my phone buzzed. At first, I thought it was spam or maybe one of those group texts from work. But no, it was a message from an unknown number with a single image attached. Curiosity got the best of me. I tapped on it and my stomach dropped. There she was, Anna, my wife, wrapped around some bulky, sweaty guy in a dimly lit alley. His hands clutched her like he owned her. The shadowy backdrop made it even more sinister. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs. I stared at the picture, trying to make sense of it. My mind went wild. Who was this guy? Why was she there? How could she do this? My head spun with questions, none of which I wanted to answer. When Anna walked through the door, I didn't even let her take off her coat. What the hell is this? I barked, shoving the phone toward her face. Her eyes flicked to the screen. For a split second, panic flashed across her face before she slapped on that calm, collected look she always used when she was cornered. Alex, listen. Listen to what? My voice was sharper than I'd ever heard it. What could you possibly say to explain this? She froze, then crumbled. Tears streamed down her face, and she started rambling, her voice shaking. It's not what it looks like. I swear. I was desperate, okay? The debts. The house. What debts, Anna? I yelled. My pulse was roaring in my ears. All of it, she blurted out. The credit cards, the mortgage, the loans. We're drowning, Alex. I didn't know what else to do. You're telling me this is about money? I cut her off. You think hooking up in back alleys is the solution? It's not like that, she sobbed. You don't understand. She crumpled onto the couch, shaking and crying, but I couldn't feel sympathy. Not yet. I needed answers. The room felt suffocating, heavy with her tears and my rage. Later that night, while she was asleep, if you can call that restless tossing and turning sleep, I sat in the kitchen. My head was spinning, but I needed to know more. I grabbed her phone, her laptop, anything I could find, and then, piece by piece, the nightmare unraveled. This wasn't just some sleazy affair. No, Anna was tangled up with dangerous people. Not your average loan sharks, something worse. An underground group, shadowy and nameless, dealing in things that made my blood run cold. The kind of people you don't cross. The kind who don't send warnings. They just show up. I felt a chill run down my spine as it all sunk in. Her frantic behavior, the picture, the debts. It all pointed to one terrifying conclusion. They weren't done with her. And if they weren't done with her, that meant they weren't done with us. The next day at work felt like walking on a wire, every step threatening to send me crashing into chaos. My brain was a mess. I couldn't stop thinking about Anna's tears, that damn photo, and the horrifying realization of what she'd gotten herself into. I didn't even touch my lunch. Just sat there staring at my desk, hoping the day would end without more surprises. But of course, life doesn't work like that. It was late afternoon when they came. 2 men. One was tall and wiry, with a smirk that felt like a knife slicing through the room. The other was shorter, broader, and built like a brick wall. They walked in like they owned the place, ignoring the receptionist's protests as they headed straight for me. Alex, right? The wiry one said, his voice dripping with mock friendliness. I froze, my mouth dry as sandpaper. My coworkers stared from their desks, whispering. Yeah, I managed, trying to sound less terrified than I felt. Brick wall slapped a phone down on my desk with a loud thud. Thought you'd like to see this, he grunted. I didn't want to touch it. I didn't even want to breathe. But when wiry guy tapped the screen to play the video, I couldn't look away. And there she was, Anna, my wife, kneeling in some dingy room, her face obscured but her actions unmistakable. The camera angle left no doubt about what was happening, or who was involved. My stomach twisted into a knot so tight I thought I might throw up. She's got talent, wiry guy sneered. Brick wall chuckled. A low, rumbling sound that made my skin crawl. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. My whole body felt like it was shutting down, except for the rage bubbling in my chest. What the hell do you want? I finally managed, my voice hoarse and barely above a whisper. We want you to know who you're dealing with, wiry guy said, leaning in close. I could smell the faint hint of cheap cologne and cigarettes. Your wife? She's in deep, pal. And now so are you. Brick Wall chimed in, his voice like gravel. You're gonna help her pay up. One way or another. I swallowed hard, trying to keep the fear out of my eyes. I don't have that kind of money, I stammered. Wiry guy grinned, tapping the phone like it was a weapon. We're not talking money yet. You'll find out soon enough. With that, they turned and walked out, leaving me sitting there like a statue. My hands were shaking so badly I knocked over my coffee cup. But I didn't even care. All I could think about was the video, the smug faces of those men, and the unspoken threat hanging in the air. They'd found me, and it was only the beginning. The day had started off with a shaky normalcy. After yesterday's nightmare visit from those two men, I kept my head down and tried to blend in. The less attention I drew, the safer I felt, or at least I tried to convince myself of that. But by late morning, my gut was twisted into knots again. Something was off. The air felt heavier, and every phone ringing or footstep outside my office made me flinch. Around noon, I heard voices growing louder in the hallway. At first, I ignored it, figuring it was just some office drama. But then the sound of my name being mentioned cut through the noise like a siren. I froze, the pen I'd been holding slipping from my fingers. The door to my tiny office slammed open, making me jump to my feet. Brick Wall and Wiry Guy were back, and they weren't alone. They had Anna. She was completely naked, her arms pinned behind her back by Brick Wall's massive hands. Her body, something I'd once cherished so intimately, was now exposed to the harsh fluorescent lights of the office. My heart pounded, not just from rage but from the unbearable humiliation. Alex, Wiry Guy called out in a sing-song voice. Thought we'd drop by to remind you of your obligations. I could barely breathe. What the hell are you doing? I hissed, my voice low but filled with panic. Just making sure you know who's in charge, Wiry Guy sneered. Come on, let's take a little walk. Before I could argue, Brick Wall shoved Anna forward. She stumbled, catching herself against my desk, her eyes locking onto mine. And then she smiled. A twisted, unsettling smirk that sent chills down my spine. It wasn't the Anna I knew. This was someone else entirely, someone colder, crueler. They dragged her out of my office and into the hallway. My protests were swallowed by the growing murmurs of my colleagues as they caught sight of her. People gasped, whispered, and some even laughed nervously, unsure of how to react. Alex, my boss barked from the end of the hall. What the hell is going on? I followed the men as they paraded Anna through the office, my legs feeling like lead. They marched her right into the director's office. Glass walls ensuring every single person in the office could see the spectacle unfold. Inside, Brick Wall shoved Anna into a chair, her bare skin pressing against the cold leather. She crossed her legs like she was lounging at a poolside, that same unsettling smirk plastered on her face. Take a good look, Alex, Wiry Guy said, his voice loud and mocking as he turned to me. We wouldn't want any misunderstandings about what happens if you step out of line. The room was dead silent except for the sound of my breathing, shallow and frantic. My director's face was a mask of horror and anger, but he seemed paralyzed, unable to process what was happening. And there was Anna, staring at me with those cold, detached eyes, her smile daring me to act. It wasn't just humiliation anymore. It was something darker, something that clawed at my soul. The entire office was watching. My world was crumbling, and they wanted everyone to see it happen. The silence in the office was suffocating, broken only by the faint rustle of people shifting uncomfortably in their seats outside the glass walls. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Shame, fury, confusion, and fear all crashing into each other. I wanted to scream, to throw punches, to do something. But I felt frozen, locked in place by the weight of dozens of staring eyes and the smirking face of my wife. Alex, Wiry Guy said, leaning casually against the edge of the director's desk. We're just here to help you understand the stakes. It'd be a shame if we had to keep upping the ante, you know. Brick Wall grunted in agreement, crossing his massive arms as if daring anyone in the room to challenge him. My director, normally a man of unshakable authority, looked like a deer caught in headlights. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Anna tilted her head, that unnerving smile still fixed on her face. "Relax, Alex," she said, her voice light and mocking. "It's just business, right?" "Shut up," I snapped, the words bursting out of me before I could stop them. My fists clenched at my sides, trembling with barely restrained rage. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Her smile only widened. She didn't care about my anger, or maybe she thrived on it. Wiry Guy chuckled, clearly enjoying the show. "See, this is what I like about you, Alex. So much passion. But you're not seeing the bigger picture here." He gestured to Anna, who sat back in the chair like a queen on her throne. "You've got a choice to make. Work with us or... Well, things like this are just the beginning." I wanted to lunge at him, to wipe that smug grin off his face. But Brick Wall shifted his stance, a silent reminder of just how quickly he could flatten me if I tried anything. "What do you want?" I said through gritted teeth, my voice shaking with barely contained fury. "Cooperation," Wiry Guy said, his tone almost cheerful. "We need a little favor. Something only you can do. Think of it as a family contribution." "Get to the point," I spat, my patience hanging by a thread. Brick Wall stepped forward, pulling a manila folder from the back pocket of his jeans and tossing it onto the desk. The papers inside spilled out, revealing blueprints, documents, and what looked like surveillance photos. "You're going to help us with this job?" Wiry Guy said, his tone turning cold. "It's big. High stakes. And we need someone like you to grease the wheels." I didn't even look at the papers. My eyes were fixed on Anna, who was still watching me with that twisted smile. Did she even care what they were doing to us? To me? "Why me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Because you're clean," Wiry Guy said with a shrug. "No record. No suspicion. A perfect little puppet to pull the strings for us." "And if I don't?" I asked, already knowing the answer but needing to hear it. Wiry Guy leaned in close, his grin evaporating into something darker, more menacing. "If you don't, Alex," he whispered, "we'll make sure you lose everything. Starting with her." He pointed at Anna, who gave me a small wave, her expression unreadable. My stomach churned. The room felt like it was closing in on me. The eyes of my coworkers bore into my back. I could practically feel the judgment, the whispers that would come later. I wanted to run, to escape this nightmare. But there was no way out. "Tick-tock," Wiry Guy said, tapping an imaginary watch on his wrist. "What's it gonna be, hero?" For the first time, I realized they didn't just want me complicit. They wanted me broken. "No!" The word erupted from me, raw and desperate, shaking the glass walls around us. It wasn't just a shout. It was everything inside me breaking loose. My hands were trembling, my vision blurred by the sheer force of my rage and disbelief. But it didn't stop her. Anna turned her head, meeting my eyes with a smirk that wasn't just cruel. It was ravenous. Before I could process what was happening, she crossed the room in two slow, deliberate steps, her bare feet almost silent against the office carpet. And then she knelt in front of my boss. Time seemed to warp, everything moving both too fast and too slow. Gasps filled the air, and I could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on me, burning holes into my back as the scene unfolded. My coworkers were frozen, too shocked to intervene, too enthralled to look away. Anna leaned in, her movements predatory, and began working. The sound was obscene, amplified by the stunned silence. My boss's face contorted, not with shame or horror, but with smug satisfaction. He leaned back in his chair, one hand gripping the edge of the desk, the other reaching down to tangle roughly in Anna's hair. Mascara streaked down her cheeks as tears welled in her eyes, not from pain, but from her effort. Her gaze flicked to mine, and I saw it, the spark of something I couldn't comprehend. Was it defiance? Enjoyment? Whatever it was, it made my stomach churn. People started laughing. At first, it was scattered, nervous giggles from those too uncomfortable to know what else to do. But then it grew, swelling into a chorus of mocking laughter that filled every inch of the office. My colleagues, my so-called peers, were laughing at me, their faces twisted in amusement and pity. The mascara smearing across her face became a grotesque highlight of the scene, as my boss ran his thumb roughly under her eyes, smearing it further like some kind of grotesque war paint. I felt like I was drowning, my chest tightening as the walls of the room seemed to close in around me. My brain screamed at me to do something, anything, but my body refused to move. And then it hit me. She wasn't ashamed. She wasn't humiliated. She was happy. There was a glint in her eye, a cruel satisfaction as if this was exactly what she wanted. To see me brought to my knees, to witness my world fall apart piece by agonizing piece. I wanted to scream, to cry, to run. But instead, I stood there, paralyzed, as the nightmare played out in front of me, knowing this wasn't just a betrayal. It was annihilation. I couldn't stop shaking, even hours after the scene at the office. It was like the embarrassment had soaked into my skin, into my very bones. My head was spinning, and no matter how much I tried, I couldn't make sense of anything. How had we ended up here? How had Anna, the woman I fell for hook, line, and sinker, turned into this cruel stranger? I thought back to when we first met, hoping to find something. Some clue in our past that could explain what had gone so far south. It was a rainy spring afternoon at a local cafe. I just ducked inside, drenched and looking like a wet rat, hoping for shelter and caffeine. She was sitting at a corner table, her hair falling in waves over one shoulder, a half-empty cup of tea in front of her. She looked calm, gorgeous, but not in a can't touch this kind of way. She was real, grounded. When our eyes met, she smiled. A real smile, warm and inviting. I don't know what possessed me, but I walked up to her, stammering out some awkward line about how rainy days make for the best tea. To my surprise, she actually laughed and invited me to sit. From that first conversation, it felt easy, like we just clicked. She was sharp, funny, effortlessly cool in a way I'd never seen before. Over the weeks and months that followed, I fell hard and fast. She seemed perfect, too perfect, but I didn't care. She made me feel alive, like I'd hit the jackpot for once in my life. We tied the knot 2 years later. Everything felt like it was falling into place. Except, it wasn't. At first, things were fine in the bedroom, good even. But not long after we said, "I do," the spark started to fizzle. She pulled away, made excuses. I figured it was stress or bad timing, so I tried to be patient. I tried to talk to her about it, but every time, she'd wave me off or steer the conversation somewhere else. Months turned into years, and intimacy became a rare event, almost like a forgotten chore. When we did have a roll in the hay, it felt forced, like she wasn't really there. I told myself it was just a rough patch, something we could work through. But then, one night after an argument about starting a family, she finally let it slip. "You don't get it, Alex," she snapped, her voice sharp and cutting. "It's not about timing or stress or whatever excuse you want to come up with. I just don't enjoy rolling in the sheets with you." Her words hit like a ton of bricks. "What do you mean?" I asked, barely keeping my voice steady. She sighed, irritated. "It's not you, okay? Well, not entirely. I just don't feel that spark with you." I never really did. I stood there, stunned. My mind reeled with the implications. Did she marry me out of pity? Because it was easy? Then why? Why are we even together? I asked, my voice cracking like cheap glass. Her answer was cold, straight to the point. "Because you're safe, Alex. You're reliable." And for a while, I thought that was enough. Those words echoed in my head long after she said them. I shoved them down deep, trying to ignore the cracks they left in our foundation. I told myself we could still make it work, that love was more than just what happens in the bedroom, more than passion. But looking back now, after everything that's happened, I wonder if that was the moment I should have seen the truth. She didn't want a family with me because she didn't want me. I had given her my heart, my trust, my everything, and she had given me nothing. Looking back, it's clear the cracks were there long before I noticed them. The whole mess, the lies, the manipulation, the humiliation, didn't just show up overnight. It all started years ago with something I brushed off as a wild experiment, an adventure to spice things up. I should have seen it for what it really was, the beginning of the end. It was a Friday night, and Anna had been unusually giddy all day. She kept hinting about a surprise, dropping little breadcrumbs that made me think maybe she had planned a weekend getaway or some fancy dinner reservation. But no, what she revealed after dinner blindsided me. "I've been thinking," she started, her tone playful but laced with something I couldn't quite place. "What if we invited someone into the bedroom?" I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her right. "You mean like a threesome?" she said casually, like she was suggesting a new Netflix series to binge. I laughed nervously, trying to gauge if she was joking. But her expression was serious, her eyes fixed on me in a way that made it clear this wasn't a whim. I don't know, Anna. That's kind of out there, don't you think?" I replied, my voice wavering. She rolled her eyes, as if I'd just suggested we turn in early on New Year's Eve. "Come on, Alex. Could be fun. We've been married for years. Don't you think it's time we try something new?" I hesitated, but her enthusiasm was infectious, or maybe it was the way she made me feel like I was being boring if I said no. Eventually, I caved, convincing myself it was harmless, just a one-time thing. The man she chose was intense, big, confident, and charismatic in a way that made me instantly feel like an outsider in my own home. His name was Dante, and he had the kind of presence that filled a room without trying. The night itself was a blur of awkwardness and misplaced excitement. I spent most of it feeling like a bystander, unsure where I fit in or if I even belonged there at all. And then there was Anna. Radiant, commanding, like I'd never seen her before. She was in charge, giving orders, pulling strings, and for the first time I felt something shift in our dynamic. When it was over, I told myself it didn't mean anything. But it did. After that night, Anna was different. She seemed to feed off the power she'd wielded, the way she'd orchestrated everything. And slowly but surely, she started trying to dominate me in ways I didn't fully understand. It began subtly, with little digs at my confidence. "You're so predictable, Alex," she'd say, laughing it off like a joke. Or, "Maybe you should try being a bit more adventurous." Dante didn't have any trouble keeping up. At first, I thought she was just teasing. But over time, those comments became sharper, more cutting, designed to chip away at me. And then there were the betrayals. The thing about Anna was that she had a way of justifying everything she did, spinning her actions into some kind of twisted logic that made me doubt my own instincts. The first time I caught her flirting with a coworker, she laughed it off. "You're imagining things, Alex," she said, rolling her eyes. When I found a suspicious text on her phone, she flipped the script, accusing me of being controlling. "Why are you going through my phone? Don't you trust me?" But the signs were there. The late nights, the excuses, the mysterious girls' weekends that never quite added up. Each time I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe I was paranoid, that I was the problem. Now though, now I can see it for what it was. That threesome wasn't just an experiment. It was a test, a gateway. The moment Anna realized she could push boundaries, manipulate me, and walk all over the trust I'd so willingly given her. And I let her. Every time I let her. That day started as bad as any could, but I never imagined how much worse it would get. After the office incident, I thought Anna had pushed every boundary possible. I thought I'd seen her at her cruelest, her most detached. I was wrong. I came home late, hoping for some time to myself, maybe even a few hours of sleep to escape the chaos for just a moment. But as soon as I walked through the door, I knew something was off. Anna was there, sitting on the edge of the couch, still in the same clothes she'd left in that morning. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smudged to the point of absurdity, and the unmistakable glint of something pearly and wet clung to her cheeks and chin. My stomach churned. "Anna," I said, my voice low and cautious, "what the hell is on your face?" She turned to me slowly, her lips curling into that infuriating smirk I'd come to dread. "Oh, this," she said, wiping a finger across her cheek and holding it up like she'd just discovered some frosting. "Don't worry about it, Alex. Just a long day, that's all." "A long day?" I shot back, my voice rising. You came home looking like that, and you're telling me not to worry? Her smirk widened into a grin as she stood and started toward me. My instincts screamed at me to step back, but I was rooted to the spot, paralyzed by a mix of anger, confusion, and shame. You know, she said, her tone playful but laced with venom. You've always wanted me to cook something special for you. My throat tightened. What are you talking about? She leaned in close, her breath warm against my ear. If you don't like my new makeup, she whispered, her voice dripping with mockery, just imagine it's a dessert. Something I whipped up just for you. You always wanted your wayward wife to make you something tasty, didn't you? I recoiled, stepping back so fast I nearly tripped over myself. What the hell is wrong with you? I shouted, my voice echoing in the small space. Anna just laughed. A low, hollow sound that sent chills down my spine. And then, as if the day couldn't get any worse, my phone buzzed. I pulled it from my pocket, desperate for a distraction, only to find messages from coworkers. Hey Alex, your wife's really something. Do you think she'd mind sharing her number? A few of us are curious. 3 guys? Really? Impressive. My vision blurred with rage as the realization sank in. Everyone at work knew. The whispers, the snickers, the stares. They weren't just about the incident in the director's office. This was new, fresh gossip. I turned back to Anna, my hands trembling. What did you do? She raised an eyebrow, feigning innocence. Oh, Alex, she said, her tone syrupy sweet. Don't tell me you're upset. You've always said I'm popular. Stop it, I snapped. Just stop. Her grin faltered for a moment, replaced by something darker. You think this is all about you? She hissed. You think your embarrassment matters more than what I've been through? You don't get to judge me, Alex. Not anymore. I stared at her, searching for the woman I used to know. But she was gone. That night, she crawled into bed beside me, her perfume mingling with the stale scent of her day. I lay stiff as a board, my fists clenched under the blanket, as she leaned in close again. You know, she murmured, her lips brushing against my ear, I think you like it when I misbehave. Keeps things interesting. I didn't respond. Couldn't. The only sound was the pounding of my heart as I stared at the ceiling, wondering how much more of this I could take. This wasn't just a betrayal anymore. It was war. I used to dream about the kind of life everyone said was possible, the American dream. A cozy house with a yard, the sound of children's laughter, family vacations filled with laughter and warm memories. It wasn't extravagant, just a slice of happiness to call our own. For years, I held on to that dream, convinced Anna and I could build it together. I imagined a little boy who'd share my curiosity, and a daughter who'd have her mother's laugh before everything turned sour. I imagined holidays with pancakes and presents, trips to the beach where the kids would bury my legs in the sand while Anna pretended to scold them. There was one moment, one perfect moment that still haunts me. 2 years ago, we were on vacation. I'd scraped together the money for a weekend trip to the mountains. Anna and I hadn't been getting along great, but I thought the change of scenery might help. She had seemed distant, but I told myself she was just stressed. That day, we were sitting by a crystal-clear lake. Families surrounded us. Kids splashing in the shallows, parents laughing as they tried to keep everyone in line. I pointed to a father helping his daughter build a sandcastle. Can't you picture it? I asked her, a hopeful smile on my face. That could be us one day. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked out over the water, her expression unreadable. Finally, she turned to me and said, Alex, not everyone wants the same things you do. I laughed awkwardly, thinking it was just her way of teasing me. Come on, Anna. You'd be a great mom. But she didn't laugh. She just shrugged. Maybe, maybe not. The rest of the trip felt off. She smiled for the photos, but it never quite reached her eyes. At night, she'd roll away from me in bed, claiming she was too tired or her back hurt. I told myself not to push it, that maybe I was reading too much into things. Looking back now, I wonder if that was when her betrayals really started. It wasn't just the affairs, though God knows those were enough to shatter me. It was the way she dismissed my hopes, the way she twisted the knife with every cold glance, every hollow laugh. "Why do you care so much about having kids, Alex?" she once asked, her voice dripping with exasperation. "You can barely keep up with your own life." I swallowed the hurt and tried to explain. "It's not about keeping up. It's about building something together. Something bigger than us." She laughed bitterly. "Yeah? And when it all falls apart, who's left holding the pieces?" Her words stayed with me, echoing in the quiet moments when I was alone. It wasn't just that she didn't want the same things I did. It was that she seemed determined to tear down the things I dreamed of. The affairs weren't just betrayals of our marriage. They were betrayals of the life I thought we were building. Every time she lied, every time she walked through the door smelling like someone else, it wasn't just her infidelity that cut me. It was the realization that my dream was dead. The boy I imagined teaching to ride a bike, the daughter with Anna's laugh, they were just shadows now, figments of a future that would never exist. And Anna didn't just destroy those dreams. She mocked them, mocked me for having them. "You're always living in some fantasy world, Alex," she'd say, her tone sharp and dismissive. "Maybe it's time you grew up." I look back on that trip to the mountains, that sunny day by the lake, and I feel like I'm watching someone else's life. Someone who still believed in Anna, in the possibility of something good. That version of me is gone. What's left is someone broken. Someone who's still trying to figure out how to let go of a dream that was never real to begin with. The breaking point came faster than I expected. After everything Anna had put me through, the lies, the betrayals, the humiliation, her latest stunt nearly sent it all spiraling out of control. It started with another one of those conversations that always ended with me feeling like I'd been run over. Anna had been lounging on the couch all day, flipping through her phone like it was her job, while I sorted through the mountain of bills that had piled up. "Anna," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "we can't keep doing this. I'm drowning here. You need to get a job." She didn't even look up. "A job? Seriously, Alex? Do you think that's going to fix anything?" "It's not about fixing everything," I snapped. "It's about contributing. We can't survive if I'm the only one trying." Finally, she looked at me, her eyes narrowing. "You think it's that simple, huh? Just slap on a name tag and start flipping burgers? You've got no clue, Alex." I clenched my fists, trying to keep my anger in check. "Anna, I don't care what kind of job it is. You need to do something. I can't keep carrying all of this on my own." She rolled her eyes. "Carrying what? You think paying the bills is some heroic act? Get over yourself." The argument spiraled from there like all of them did. But this time, it didn't end when Anna stormed out of the room. No, this time, she went straight to her friends, the same people who had been pulling her strings for months. I was in the parking lot after work the next day when they came for me. Brick wall and wiry guy again, flanked by a third man I hadn't seen before. Taller, meaner looking, with a permanent scowl etched into his face. "Alex," wiry guy called out, his grin as smug as ever. "We need to have a little chat." I kept walking, pretending not to hear him, but they caught up fast. "Hey, we're talking to you," the new guy growled, grabbing my shoulder and spinning me around. "What the hell do you want now?" I barked, my heart pounding. "You've been giving Anna a hard time," wiry guy said, his tone mockingly cheerful. "That's not very nice of you, is it?" "She's not pulling her weight," I shot back. "If she's got a problem with that, maybe she should try being an adult for once." The grin dropped from his face. "You know, I don't like your attitude," he said, stepping closer. "Anna's been through a lot, and here you are, playing the hero. It's pathetic." Before I could respond, Brick Wall lunged at me, grabbing my arm and twisting it hard. Pain shot through my shoulder as I let out a yell, struggling to pull away. "You need to learn some respect," Brick Wall growled, his grip tightening. "Let me go," I shouted, panic setting in as the third guy moved closer, cracking his knuckles. "Respect starts with knowing your place," wiry guy said, leaning in close. "And your place is doing whatever Anna needs you to do without question." I felt my arm bend unnaturally, the pressure threatening to snap something. But just when I thought they had me, my fingers brushed against the small canister in my pocket. Without thinking, I yanked it out and pressed the nozzle, spraying wildly in their direction. Ch-ch. What the? Brick Wall stumbled back, letting go of my arm as he clawed at his face. Wiry Guy yelped, covering his eyes, while the third man cursed loudly, stumbling into a parked car. I didn't wait to see the aftermath. I turned and ran, my arm throbbing but functional, adrenaline pumping through me like fire. I heard their shouts behind me, but I didn't stop until I was safely locked in my car. For the first time in what felt like forever, I'd stood my ground. They didn't break me, not this time. But as I sat there, catching my breath, a chilling realization settled over me. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. They'd be back, and next time I might not be so lucky. It didn't take long for them to find me again. I knew it was coming. After what happened in the parking lot, after I fought back, it was only a matter of time. People like them didn't just let things slide. They caught me outside my apartment one night, just as I was fumbling with my keys. I heard the sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate, and I knew before I even turned around. Wiry Guy was there, his smug grin back in place, flanked by Brick Wall and the new guy from before. They were different this time, though calmer, colder. There was no pretense of casual intimidation. They were here to settle a score. You made this a lot harder than it needed to be, Alex, Wiry Guy said, shaking his head like he was genuinely disappointed. But don't worry, we're gonna fix that. I tried to back up, but Brick Wall was already on me, grabbing my shoulder and shoving me against the door. Let's keep this simple, Wiry Guy continued, stepping closer. You owe us. Anna owes us. And now you're gonna pay. I don't have anything, I shouted, my voice cracking. I told you before, I don't have the money. Who said anything about money? Wiry Guy said, his grin widening. You've got plenty to offer. You just don't know it yet. Before I could respond, Brick Wall twisted me around, pinning me against the door. I struggled, but he was too strong, his grip like iron. All right, Alex, Wiry Guy said, his voice almost cheerful. Time to hand over the goods. I froze, my stomach dropping. What are you talking about? You've got something we need, he said, leaning in close. And lucky for us, you're already carrying it. The realization hit me like a freight train. My face burned with humiliation as they laughed, the sound echoing in the cold night air. You've got to be kidding me, I muttered, my voice barely above a whisper. Do we look like we're kidding? The new guy sneered, cracking his knuckles. The next few moments were a blur of shame and rage. They didn't hurt me, not physically, but they didn't need to. They made me do it. Right there in the alley, with their mocking laughter ringing in my ears. When it was over, I collapsed against the wall, my body trembling. They took what they wanted, shoving it into a bag without a second thought, and left me there like I was nothing. As they walked away, I heard Wiry Guy call out over his shoulder. Tell Anna we said thanks for the hookup. She really does have a way with dream jobs. And then, as if to twist the knife, I heard her laugh. I turned my head and saw her standing at the end of the alley, arms crossed, watching the whole thing unfold. Her laughter was cruel, echoing in the empty street like a knife slicing through my chest. See, Alex, she called out, her voice dripping with mockery. This is what happens when you don't play ball. Maybe next time you'll learn your place. She walked away without another word, leaving me slumped against the wall, my humiliation complete. I don't know how long I stayed there, staring into the darkness, wondering how I'd let it get this far, how I'd let her destroy me. But one thing was clear. Whatever was left of the man I used to be was gone. And Anna? She wasn't just a part of the nightmare. She was the nightmare. The days after that night were a blur of shame and fury, but something inside me had snapped. I wasn't the same person anymore, the one who begged for understanding, who hoped things would somehow get better. No, that man was gone, replaced by someone colder, sharper, someone who wasn't going to take it anymore. It was time for revenge. I spent every waking moment planning, replaying every humiliation, every betrayal, until my anger was a blade honed to perfection. Anna and her crew had stripped me of my dignity, so I'd strip them of everything they valued. They wanted no mercy? Fine. I could play their game. First, I started small, testing the waters. I found Wiry Guy's car, a sleek little number he liked to show off, and gave it a custom paint job with a crowbar. The next morning, he'd wake up to find every panel dented, the windshield smashed, and the words, "Still Laughing," spray painted across the hood. Next was brick wall. I remembered him bragging about a gym he frequented, the kind of place where guys like him strutted around like kings. It wasn't hard to sneak in late at night with a pair of bolt cutters. The lockers, sliced open, his expensive gear, soaked in bleach, his prized weights, disappeared, dumped in a nearby river. The coward fun came next, targeting the one person who had hurt me the most. Anna. She loved her little world of power and control, but she had secrets. So many secrets. It didn't take much digging to find them. Her affair with her boss, her flings with strangers, her debts. All of it documented in excruciating detail on her phone, which I'd quietly cloned weeks ago. I waited until her weekly yoga class before striking. While she was busy pretending to be serene and enlightened, I sent every juicy detail of her private life to a group chat with her friends, her coworkers, and her family. The fallout was immediate. My phone buzzed non-stop with messages from people who thought they'd been her confidants. Each one a new nail in the coffin of her reputation. But that wasn't enough. Not for me. I had one more move, the finale to my revenge. I'd learned enough about Anna's shady friends to know they operated on trust, or at least the fragile illusion of it. So I planted evidence. Photos, messages, fake receipts, all pointing to Anna skimming off their profits. It wasn't hard to make it look real. People like them. They thrived on paranoia. The storm hit fast. By the time I got the call, Anna was in full meltdown mode, screaming that she was being accused of stealing, that her so-called friends were out for blood. I didn't bother hiding my grin. "Guess they don't trust you anymore," I said, my voice cold. "Karma's funny like that, huh? You did this," she shrieked, her voice raw with fury. "You're going to regret it, Alex." But I didn't regret it. Not a single second. The last I heard, she was on the run, her little empire of lies collapsing around her. Her former allies were out for revenge, her family had disowned her, and her carefully curated social circles had turned their backs. As for me, I didn't feel whole. Revenge didn't fix what she'd broken, but it gave me something else, closure. I wasn't the same man anymore, but I was free. Free of her. Free of them. And for the first time in years, free to start again. I thought it was over. I really did. Anna was gone. Her empire of lies and manipulation shattered. Her so-called allies out for her blood. I'd gotten my revenge, and while it didn't heal me, it gave me the closure I needed to move forward. Or so I thought. I was locking up the office late one night when I felt it. That familiar chill in the air, the unmistakable sense of being watched. I glanced over my shoulder, and my stomach dropped. He was there. The fat, sweaty, hairy man from the photos that started this whole mess. The one who fed Anna his special recipe and set my life on fire. But he wasn't alone. Behind him stood 5 other guys, each one bigger and meaner looking than the last. Tattoos, scars, thick arms crossed over barrel chests. They looked like they could snap me like a twig. And from the way they stared me down, that seemed to be exactly what they planned to do. "Alex," the sweaty man said, his voice low and oily. "You've been a busy little bee, haven't you?" I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "I don't know what you're talking about," he chuckled, a sound that made my skin crawl. "Oh, I think you do. You see, Anna wasn't the only one you pissed off. You made me look like a fool, Alex. And now it's time to pay for that." The guys behind him cracked their knuckles, their grins wolfish. My mind raced, but there was nowhere to run. They had me cornered. "Look, Before I could finish, one of them lunged at me, grabbing my shirt and slamming me against the wall. Pain shot through my back, and I gasped, struggling against his grip. "Not so tough now, huh?" he sneered, his breath hot against my face. The others moved in, closing the circle around me. I braced myself for the worst, my thoughts flashing to every bad decision that had led me to this moment. And then I heard it. A voice I hadn't expected. "Let him go." I craned my neck to see my brother standing at the edge of the alley. His face set in a rare expression of fury. Couldn't believe it. My brother, the same one who had tormented me growing up, the one who never missed an opportunity to rub salt in my wounds, was standing up for me? The sweaty man laughed. Who the hell are you supposed to be? Family backup? My brother didn't flinch. You're damn right. And if you lay another hand on him, you're gonna wish you hadn't. The thugs exchanged glances, clearly unimpressed. But my brother wasn't alone. Behind him, I spotted a group of guys I recognized. His friends from the gym, each one as big and intimidating as the goons who had cornered me. Looks like we've got ourselves a party, one of the thugs growled, stepping forward. Yeah, my brother said, cracking his knuckles. But it's not one you're gonna enjoy. The fight was brutal, chaotic, and over faster than I expected. My brother and his crew didn't just hold their own. They dominated, taking down the thugs one by one. By the time it was over, the sweaty man was sprawled on the ground, groaning and clutching his ribs. My brother offered me a hand, pulling me to my feet. You okay? He asked, his tone gruff. I nodded, still too stunned to speak. Good, he said, brushing himself off. Now let's get the hell out of here before these idiots decide they want a round two. As we walked away, I couldn't help but glance at him, trying to process what had just happened. Why? I finally asked. Why did you help me? He shrugged, his expression unreadable. You're my brother, he said simply, and nobody messes with my family. Not even you. For the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled, a real, genuine smile. Maybe, just maybe, things were finally starting to turn around. I thanked my brother for saving my skin that night. Words didn't feel like enough, but they were all I had to offer. For all our history, the teasing, the rivalry, the way he always seemed to get more from life, he showed up when it mattered most. He shrugged it off like he wasn't the reason I walked out of that alley in one piece. Don't get soft on me, Alex, he said with his usual smirk. But there was something in his eyes that told me this meant something to him too. We weren't the kind of brothers who said things outright, but after that night, I knew he'd have my back. Time marched on, dragging me along with it. Picking up the pieces of my life felt like digging through wreckage after a storm. Slow, messy, and exhausting. Work became my anchor, the place where I could put my head down and focus on something concrete. I clawed my way up the ladder with sheer determination, proving to everyone, and maybe to myself, that I wasn't going to be the guy people walked all over anymore. When I finally made it to the top and took over as the boss, it felt surreal. The first thing I did was call a meeting with the entire staff. I stood at the front of the room, looking out at the faces of people who had seen me at my lowest. Some were guilty, avoiding my eyes. Others wore smirks, probably thinking I wouldn't do anything. They were wrong. One by one, I cut them loose, the people who had laughed, the ones who had whispered behind my back, the ones who stood by when everything fell apart. It wasn't just about setting things right. It was about sending a message. The days of me being a doormat were over. Outside the office, I found another way to channel my energy. The city had always been crawling with troublemakers. Guys who thought they could throw their weight around and get away with it. For years, I turned a blind eye, too caught up in my own mess to care. But not anymore. I started making calls, talking to people who knew people, and using my position to squeeze out the small-time crooks. It wasn't flashy work, but little by little, it started to add up. The city felt a little less grimy, a little less dangerous. And then there was Anna. She gave birth to a child not long after everything blew up. From the moment I saw the baby, I knew it wasn't mine. The timeline didn't add up, and I didn't need a test to confirm what was already plain as day. But as I stared down at that tiny bundle, all my anger melted away. The baby was innocent, caught in the middle of a mess they didn't ask for. I couldn't turn my back on them. And Anna? She wasn't the same woman who had dragged me through the mud. Something about becoming a mother changed her. The sharp edges that used to define her seemed to soften. She stopped tearing me down at every opportunity, stopped treating life like a game she needed to win. At first, I couldn't trust it. I waited for her to slip, to show me that this was just another one of her ploys. But as the months turned into years, her change seemed real. She wasn't perfect, far from it, but she became a mother who showed up, who cared, who tried. I forgave her, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Carrying all that bitterness was like dragging around a bag of bricks. It was weighing me down, and I was ready to let it go. Somehow, against all odds, we started to rebuild. The cracks in our relationship didn't magically disappear, but we found a way to live with them. A few years later, we had a daughter. A bright, beautiful little girl who became the light of my life. She's everything I'd ever hoped for in a child. Curious, funny, full of life. Every time she smiles, I feel like I'm seeing the world through new eyes. She'll be starting school soon, and I already feel that tug in my chest, knowing she's growing up faster than I'm ready for. But even as life feels more stable, there's a part of me that's restless. I want a second child, not just for her, but for me. I want to feel that joy again, to have that sense of building something even bigger. The trouble is, I don't know if it's with Anna. She's a good mother. She really is. But somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing her as a partner. The attraction is gone. And when I look at her, I don't see the woman I fell in love with. I see someone familiar, someone dependable, but not someone I want to build a future with. So now, I'm left with a choice. Keep holding on to this patched-together life or risk tearing it apart to find something more. For now, I stay. For my daughter. For the peace we've managed to carve out of the chaos. But deep down, I know this isn't the end of the story.